manipulation, inflated egos, smear campaigns, and deception. Welcome to another day in Hollywood. This has been such an entertaining week. This week is just chock full of stories that are coming over from 2024, 2025, stories that I cannot believe we are still discussing in 2026. You people involved, you should be embarrassed, but also, as you guys know, I'm not complaining. I am, in fact, enjoying myself. Thank you for giving me content as a distraction from the world. Anyway, I really cannot believe that we are still talking about a movie that really was not that great. Like, Sony, you wanted publicity, you wanted the movie to do well. We are still talking about it ends with us over a year and a half later. Because more evidence from this buffet of lawsuits between Blake Lively and Justin Baldoni just keeps pouring out. And the most recent drop of court documents just continue to prove that Blake Lively and all of her friends are mean and liars, and all they are is, okay, diving into that, make sure that you like this video, subscribe to the channel if you have not already, and of course, ring that notification bell. And if you want to see ad-free versions of these episodes, if you want behind-the-scenes content and farm vlogs and travel vlogs, all of that can be found at my subscription site, Cooper Confidential. Go check it out at cooperconfidential.com. All right, so let's just dive into this. Let's rewind a little bit. Let's go back to August of 2024 when we began this journey together. That was a whole other YouTube channel ago. It Ends With Us, starring Blake Lively and Justin Baldoni, was in theaters. Blake Lively on social media was getting run through because of her promotion of her new Blake Lively hair care line, basically trying to pull off a Temu Barbenheimer with her husband's movie, doing this floral girly pop promotion about a domestic violence movie. Then you have Justin Baldoni, the lead actor and the director, who is nowhere to be found in all of this press. He's not at the premiere, which actually we learned later on. He was in the basement of the premiere, not allowed out, but he's on his own. He's not partaking in the florals and the silliness, and he's promoting this movie by bringing awareness to domestic violence and trying to shed light on survivors and what this story means to them. And the internet picked up on this tension. They weren't happy with the way that Blake Lively was promoting the film. They obviously saw that Justin Baldoni was not there, and the internet sleuths dove in. So now let's fast forward to December of 2024, when a bombshell New York Times article drops detailing this alleged smear campaign by Justin Baldoni against Blake Lively, how she endured sexual harassment on this set, and that when she brought it to light and tried to address it with Justin Baldoni and his PR team, they turned the internet against her. They retaliated by enacting a smear campaign. And the same article announced that Blake Lively had filed a legal complaint just the Friday before. And one thing to note is that we don't know how the New York Times got that information. It was supposedly a leak. They found out this information. Like, who knows how all of this information, the text, the complaints, just landed in their lap. That is how smear campaigns work, Blake. Actually, you would know. Sorry, getting ahead of myself. Allegedly. Now, fast forward to 2026. We are getting closer to when these cases are going to trial. And now the texts have come out. The ones everyone has been waiting for, between Blake Lively and her best friend, Taylor Swift. And we're gonna get to that. Don't worry. But those texts are only one piece of this huge puzzle, because if you just read that New York Times article, if you just read that initial complaint from Blake Lively, you could very well be convinced that all of this drama, this fighting, was about one thing, that it was just about sexual harassment retaliation, a man who was using his status as this feminist ally to make a woman uncomfortable, cover up his tracks, and then retaliate against her in the press. But thanks to the last year and a half and Baldoni's countersuits, the whistleblowers, and now text messages and deposition transcripts that just came out, we know that this is actually a much bigger story. And it's actually something that I called out almost exactly a year ago. This isn't really about sexual harassment in my mind. Blake Lively, in my opinion, wanted to take over the production from Justin Baldoni. She was allegedly willing to go as far as painting him as an abuser in the press. Now, I didn't know when that started, when she decided that she wanted to take it over, but something had sparked it and she desperately wanted this film. And we knew this was a pattern in her family, that this had happened before on sets with her husband, Ryan Reynolds. And if you want all of that information, I will link that episode below where we talked about it again. This was almost exactly a year ago. But Blake was angry that test audiences liked Justin's version or cut of the film more. She was maybe angry that he had the rights to the entire series to make all the movies when she wanted them. Something happened. At some point in this entire production, she decided that she wanted to push him out. People on social media then turned her into the villain because they saw right through this. And then this complaint in the New York Times article, allegedly, if she was involved, allegedly, was her way to come out on top and bury him. But it didn't work. Up until this point, Blake and her team had made it seem like she only really got involved. She took over this project later on, like basically in post-production. After it got so bad and messy and, Baldoni was so awful to work with and everybody hated him, then she and her benevolent husband, Ryan Reynolds, the star, the brilliant screenwriter, they stepped in. She was directing scenes. They were rewriting scenes, hiring their own editors, bringing in Taylor Swift to do the music, yada, yada, yada. I assumed that it was like halfway through the production, maybe even after filming had ended. But as we have learned with each new drop of evidence, it seems like the truth of what actually happened on that set and what was happening far before the cameras even started rolling is very different than what we were told in the New York Times. Even in regards to how Sony, the executive producers, the production company, the distributor, how they felt about Blake Lively and the production. Because according to Sony executives in their depositions, their text messages, she herself was a problem. More specifically, they said that she was a terrorist. When Sony executive Ange Giannetti was deposed, she was asked this question: do you recall telling Jamie Heath, that is one of the producers on Wayfarer, one of Justin Baldoni's partners, do you remember telling this individual that you thought Blake Lively was an effing terrorist? And now the lawyer steps in and says objection, and the witness says yes. I mean, how bad was this woman? She's now slinging all of these attacks on how awful Justin Baldoni was to work with when executives at Sony are calling you a terrorist. But guys, there is more. Ange was not the only Sony executive who voiced their complaints. This is from the new filings from Baldoni's team. Quote, Sony executives privately observed that the negative publicity around Lively was driven by her own conduct. So this is as the movie is rolling out. Executive VP and Chief Communications Officer wrote, she orchestrated all of this drama in a totally unsavvy and amateur way, basically threatened Sony, and now is mad that it backfired on her. So even they know she is mad that it backfired on her. So she has reason then to go out to the press, to go into the courts, to try to stir up something allegedly, to make sure that she still ends up on top. Sony's CEO even observed that although Lively didn't deserve the backlash, she did bring it on herself by refusing to listen to advice and by selling her products, aka her hair care line. Sony president then said she did it to herself. If she just let him come to the premiere or didn't make all of the cast unfollow him or kick him off the movie, listen to that, didn't make the cast unfollow him, kick him off of the movie, and did what everyone else has done in show business for time immemorial, which is to protect the show, then none of the sleuthing would have happened. The hair sell at the same time was epic level stupid. She wouldn't listen. She knows better. So Sony themselves is saying that she was a problem, that she was turning people against Baldoni, that she allegedly went so far as asking them to unfollow him, that she was the reason that Justin Baldoni, on his own production that he owns the rights to, that he started working on years ago, that he wrote and directed and starred in, the reason why he was in the basement at his own movie's premiere, even they knew. That's damning. Like, that is so incredibly damning. Now, to be fair, I also want to say, Sony was also not thrilled with Baldoni because concerns had been raised on the set, but it wasn't because of sexual harassment. It wasn't because he was some kind of pervert. The Sony exec in question said it fell into the category of unprepared, indecisive, and inexperienced. That is what they were told about Baldoni. And then the opposing counsel asks, those are the only issues that you recall her raising to you at any time regarding Mr. Baldoni? And then she says she had other criticisms. And then they go, okay, well, what were they? And she says it was too loose on the set. What else? He was too sensitive. Too sensitive? Yes. Anything else? I'm sure, but I can't recall the specificity of that. So he was too loose. That could be, that's vague. That could mean a lot of different things, but he was unprepared, indecisive, inexperienced, too sensitive, but not a predator. Not a pervert. They said that and anything else that was brought up that they can't really remember, that was not enough for them to step in. That none of it was enough for them to call in HR. To recap and sum this up, what it means is that Sony knew that things were happening on the set, that things were being stirred up. They heard complaints, but they didn't think that they were serious. And then they also turned on Blake later on when her antics, when her immaturity ruined the rollout of the film. And I say immaturity because they pointed directly to her not showing up and just doing the damn thing, holding up her end of the bargain, being a relatively good person, being an actress, and showing up and smiling and doing what she was contractually obligated to do. Instead, she weaseled her way in, poisoned the water, whatever it may be. They are directly calling that out. And maybe Sony thought that they could trust her and Ryan, so they kind of gave her free reign. Who knows? But it is obvious that by the end of this production, they were not happy. All right, now back to the timeline, back to the hostile takeover, the regime change. This is the real regime change we should be talking about right now. Court filings, the most recent ones from this week, from Baldoni's legal team, confirm what we all suspected, what I said a year ago, that Blake was not just acting in this movie. She was not just a white knight trying to save the other women from this awful director. She was allegedly actively trying to take it over. And the story was different every single time she told it. For example, take this email that she sent to a playwright friend in July of 2024, before the movie came out. This friend is asking for advice, notes on a script that she had sent Blake, and she responds with the excuse, I was filming one movie, and then when the studio took the film from the director of the movie I was in post on and asked me to take it over, so I have been re-editing the entire film. I brought on my own composer, the whole team had to redo everything. I just finished the final sound mix in LA yesterday, flying back now to do final color time this week, and then I'm out from under this. This movie comes out in a month. It's diving into the press. She's saying she's hoping that she can come up for air after all of that. Well, that's not the story that Sony has told. It seems more like, the words I would use are bullied and strong-armed, and that maybe Sony just didn't care. They just wanted it all to end with us buying tickets to the movie and shutting up so that they did not have to deal with this high school drama that they felt was going on this set. Anyway, to further back this up, less than 10 days after the premiere, she and Colleen Hoover, who is the writer of the book series, were joking over text about doing the adaptation for one of the other books that Baldoni and his production company had the option and have the rights for. She knows that. And this is what happened. In this text thread, they start off by mocking Justin Baldoni's viral proposal video that he made for his wife many years ago, before he was even a director or anything like that. He was on Jane the Virgin. This beautiful proposal that he did for his wife Emily went viral, and they start talking about that. And they send it to a mutual friend of theirs. This is Colleen, a friend, and Blake in this group chat. And Colleen says, this video is going to be mine and Blake's inspiration for It Starts With Us. And then the friend responds, he's a sociopath. And Blake says, actually, and a narcissist. Justin Baldoni, as an individual, he might not be everyone's cup of tea. He is very mushy-gushy. You see that through his social media, the projects that he does, the way that he speaks, the proposal video, how he is with his wife. He is a feminist ally. He had a feminist podcast. He's very spiritual. He has a man bun. Maybe he's really into himself. But let's face it, most of Hollywood is all of those things, especially the directors. The directors are very into themselves. So are you, Blake. Anyway, that alone, his personality, it does not mean that you have the grounds to allegedly steal a project that he and his company has paid for, that they have the options for, and yet Blake and Colleen are preemptively talking about what they will do with this next film when they allegedly take it over. But guys, it didn't even end there. There is more evidence. Because remember, this was again last year, how Blake was bragging to and sort of threatening Justin in old text messages about her cohort of Game of Thrones style dragons that she had in her corner, and it definitely felt a little edgy and like she was pushing him. Well, we officially know who was in that collection of dragons. In order to back up her hostile takeover of the film, she brought in the Avengers of A-list actors: Matt Damon, Ben Affleck, Bradley Cooper, Hugh Jackman, and of course, her husband, Ryan Reynolds. And in all of these communications, she is asserting that she took over the film, not even hiding it. Listen to this. Lively told famous friends, including Matt Damon, Lucy Damon, his wife, Ben Affleck, that she, quote, rewrote the script. I directed every actor, is what she said. She also did not hesitate to disparage Baldoni among her Hollywood crowd, describing him to Ben Affleck, for example, as a, quote, chaotic clown. That was in a extremely long email that she wrote to Ben Affleck. Quote, I ended up rewriting and restructuring the entire script. I also ended up having to direct the movie via the chaotic clown, director, actor, producer, financer, studio head at the center. Now, those were just some of the friends that we know she spoke to thanks to this court filing. We also know that Hugh Jackman was literally there supporting her, working on Deadpool Wolverine with Ryan. He was at the premiere. She had Bradley, who is dating her friend Gigi Hadid, come to this friends and family screening that she had, trying to convince Sony that everyone loved her version of the film instead of Justin, so that's how he was involved. But we're still missing the biggest dragon of all. And it's why Brian Freeman, who's Justin Baldoni's attorney, fought so hard to get these depositions, to get these subpoenas done. It was Taylor Swift. It was the mother of all dragons. None of these industry friends are bigger than Taylor Swift, who, as you all know, has been so adamant over the last year and a half that she was not involved. In fact, she even went so far as to claim that she was a victim of this lawfare and that she began to distance herself from Blake. One article reads, as per Rob Shutter's Shutter Scoop report, Taylor Swift and Blake Lively, quote, haven't spoken in nearly a year. A source explained Taylor feels betrayed. Blake knows that she crossed a line by getting Taylor involved in all of this. A Hollywood insider added that the musician felt used when her name appeared in legal documents. And then these rumors and, sources aside, her actual spokesperson said that Baldoni's move to depose the singer is intended to, quote, draw public interest by creating tabloid clickbait instead of focusing on the facts of the case. The rep, who noted that the only connection the singer has with the film is permitting the use of My Tears Ricochet in the film and in the trailer, added that Taylor Swift never set foot on the set of this movie. She was not involved in any casting or creative decisions. She did not score the film. She never saw an edit or made any notes on the film. film. She did not even see It Ends With Us until weeks after its public release and was traveling around the globe during 2023 and 2024, headlining the biggest tour in history. Well, here's the thing. We know that that's not really true. Like, at this point, the only thing that we know is true is how comfy Cozy Earth bedding really is. Okay, guys, so let's face it, January is not my favorite month. It is dark, it's cold, everybody's getting sick, but there is one thing that makes it better, and that's cuddling up with Cozy Earth. And Cozy Earth just launched their new Baja bedding set that you need to check out. It is their first fully matching collection of sheets, duvet cover, quilt, and coverlet, all inspired by the essence of Baja California. And if you really want to take it to the next level and feel like you're at that resort, you can add in their luxe bath towels, which are plush, absorbent, and feel like a huge warm hug after you step out of the shower. And best of all, everything at Cozy Earth comes with a 100-night sleep trial and a 10-year warranty. So start the new year with real comfort and go to CozyEarth.com and use my code Brett for up to 20% off your order. Again, that is CozyEarth.com/Brett. And if you get a post-purchase survey, make sure that you mention that you heard about them right here. Now, before you go cozy up in your new Cozy Earth bedding, make sure that you get your phone from Pure Talk. If your credit card balance is freaking you out after all of the Christmas spending, I have something that can save you money right now. You can cut your cell phone bill in half by switching to Pure Talk Saver Plan. It's just $20 a month for unlimited talk, text, and 3 gigs of high-speed data on Pure Talk's super fast nationwide 5G network. They're on the same network as the big companies you rely on, but they're more transparent, more affordable, and they share our values. And if you are an active or former military, first responder, you can save an additional 20% off every single month. So if saving money without compromising quality is a 2026 goal, then this is a great way to start. Just go to puretalk.com/Cooper and make the switch today in as little as 10 minutes. Again, talk, text, data for just $20 a month. That is puretalk.com/Cooper, and you will save an additional 50% off your first month. Again, that is talk, text, and data for just $20 a month. That is puretalk.com/Cooper, and you will save an additional 50% off your first month. That's Pure Talk, America's and my wireless company. All right, now briefly back to Taylor Swift and that statement. There are a few lies there that I should remind you of. First, that she was not involved in any casting when we know for a fact that she helped pick the actress who played young Blake. The young actress confirmed this, as did Justin.
She told me Taylor Swift helped her get the role, like signed off on her audition.
I had brought in, I was casting, and I had actually brought in and showed her casting tape to Blake and Taylor, and they were both like, yes, her. And that's a true story.
So we know that what her spokesperson is saying is not the whole truth. Now, secondly, she says that she never saw a cut of the film. Now, maybe, giving her the benefit of the doubt, maybe she didn't see the entirety of the film, a full cut, but Blake did send Taylor the trailer and specifically asked her for notes and even asked her to show it to Travis. And that wasn't just innocent friend excitement, like, I'm so excited about this movie, watch the trailer, do you love it? No, it was all done under the umbrella of taking the project from Justin Baldoni and getting it all done Blake's way. Just listen. This is what Blake writes to Taylor. I've finally gotten to get in the edit. Alone. No Justin. I'm gonna make this movie great and successful if it is the last thing I do. They've sent me a trailer. I'd love to know what you think. I can change it. I'm just curious your reaction as somebody who knows pop culture better than anyone, and also as someone who's read the book. She goes on and she says, song variable aside, they're talking about using Taylor's song in the trailer. Would love to know what you think. Please show Trav too. Would love his opinion also. And then she sends the link. To which Taylor responded, oh my God, I just saw the above text. Oh my God, it's amazing. I'm so sorry I was in a daze, a lavender haze, maybe I didn't see the first text. And then she says, wow, I love how they used the song, her song. And then she says, welcome to Hollywood, Justin. And then they go on and they joke about how Justin was quote unquote stupid for agreeing to use Taylor's song in the trailer because in their words, using Taylor's song would give Blake, her best friend, power through Taylor. Taylor writes, he would be like no Taylor Swift in the trailer because that gives you more power over the film. That's your ally, not his. And then Blake responds and says, get yourself a best friend who thinks like the actual Roman Empire. And then Taylor responds and says, his misogyny runs so deep that he thinks women are incapable of winning chess matches or making long game power plays. It's ironic considering where we are now. And then Blake responds and says, you are so right and so wickedly smart to call it. He should have run from your music. I never thought about that. But holy shit, how stupid. This was his only shot at having the appearance of an upper hand. Now that entire conversation is so important because if we think back to this summer when all the Taylor stuff was coming out, when Brian Freeman was trying to get these texts, so a lot of people were like, I can see why Taylor feels betrayed and is angry and, is distancing herself because it seemed like on the surface that Blake was using her without her knowledge, was throwing her name around, was taking advantage of their friendship and her power and her influence without Taylor's knowledge. Referring to Taylor as her dragon to Justin. Well, guys, turns out that Blake also referred to Taylor as her dragon to Taylor, and Taylor was in on the joke the entire time. Blake says, I have never felt more like Khaleesi. I have dragons. And then Taylor responds, I'm just picturing you muttering dracaries, and then I fire off those texts to Austin. And then she puts like dragon fire emojis. What she's talking about there is that her brother Austin Austin works for her, works at her business, and he is the one that manages where her music gets placed in the world. You know, if it's used in a commercial, a movie, whatever. So if, you know, her song was going to be used in this film with Blake, her brother Austin was going to have to approve it and get that ball rolling. All of this, in my mind, confirms a few things. Number one, that Sony did not really have Blake's back, that they weren't really happy with her either. She was not the knight in shining armor for this film. Now, number two, that she was using power and influence from people close to her to pressure Justin, allegedly, and probably to make him feel like these huge industry giants were going to turn on him. All of this, it almost feels like literal psychological warfare. You have this director, you have Justin Baldoni, he's a writer, he's a director, he's an actor, and it's not really his first rodeo, but this was going to be his biggest project to date. You know, he's still a little green, he's done a few movies here and there, but mainly he's been an actor, and behind the scenes, somebody who was supposed to be his friend and collaborator is allegedly working with people that he probably looks up to, maybe wants to collaborate with, to allegedly destroy his reputation. And then knowing all of that, you stupidly think that it's a good idea to turn around and sue him for a smear campaign? I mean, it does not make sense. And I mean, yes, like I am sure, yes, that Baldoni retaliated in some way with his PR team. That is what a good PR and crisis management team does. They're there to get you out of a mess, to fight back against attacks that are being hurled at you. And maybe that was not happening on social media, but maybe in Justin's mind, it was happening behind the scenes and he wanted to, you know, get ahead of it. But I really do not think that it was all because of a sexual harassment complaint. That is not where this started. And you cannot convince me that that is why Justin Baldoni retaliated. I think it's because he knew that objectively, based on the text that we have, that she had been bad-mouthing him and attempting to cut the legs off of his career out from under him. That is what I learned from these text messages. And here's the kicker. This is probably the most important thing in this entire episode. Going back to what I was saying earlier about not knowing when this started, you know, what was the catalyst for all of this anger and resentment? Based on these texts, based on what has now been unveiled, it did not just start in post-production. It didn't even start on set after this alleged sexual harassment incident. We now have confirmation, thanks to these texts with Blake and Taylor, that they were plotting against him and bad-mouthing him from before the production even started in May of 2023. No sexual harassment claims had happened. There was no anything. HR had not been called. Blake, seemingly, we don't know why, wanted this production for herself. And again, this was clear last year. This is what I said in that episode, but now we know how preemptive it was. So just take a look at these texts from April of 2023, a month before shooting started. Hey, when you get here, she's talking to Taylor, when you get here, if this doofus director of my movie is still here, I'll be ushering him out, but hopefully he's still here. Can you do me a huge favor? I need help with him. Can you tell him you're excited for the movie, that you read the book and that you're freaking out over the pages that I sent you? What a magnetic scene that is, or whatever descriptives you're comfortable with. I'll send you the scene. You don't have to read it, of course. He's a clown and thinks he's a writer now and got this rewrite and told me he appreciates my passion. That's it. So the scene that she wants Taylor to read and, celebrate and, applaud is the scene that Blake Lively rewrote. She's already trying to get involved before the cameras even started rolling. So having the greatest living storyteller, gassing up Taylor Swift, unknowingly echo to him how much you love what we're doing, giving him credit as if he wrote them with me, will go such a long way. And then interestingly, she says, "You dug a movie out of a grave already once for me. I want to know what movie that was." She then sends the script. And then Taylor responds and says, "I'll do anything for you." And then Blake responds and says, "I love you, thank you, text me when you're on your way." And then she'll have her assistant or somebody go down and meet her. And then after that, a now infamous meeting occurred. The one that we read about in previous court filings where Baldoni said that he felt like Taylor Swift was ambushing him and pressuring him at Blake Lively's apartment. Because Taylor Swift, just somehow shows up, she's coming over to hang out at their house. She accidentally runs into Justin and at Blake's request attempts to manipulate him, objective, this is what's happening, manipulate him into doing what Blake wants, to get this rewrite into the movie. Now, a few hours later, Blake sends her this message. "You were so epically heroic today. I recapped every moment to Ryan. I kept remembering stuff. You making shit up about me and lenses and referring to yourself as my doll. This is so weird. This relationship is so weird. This clown falling for it all, but also resisting it. You are the world's absolutely greatest friend ever. I won the lottery." And then Taylor writes back, it's literally like they're 14 years old. "You are the coolest person in the world and you like me." Like, ladies, what are we doing here? Anyway, the point in me bringing this up, it was before the movie even started being filmed. Now I have so many more questions. Like, what on earth are we missing here? Like, what did poor Justin Baldoni do to warrant this treatment from Blake Lively before they even got on set together. She can't argue that it was him, barging into her trailer while she was breastfeeding. We already know that she texted and invited him in. She can't even argue that it was her character's birth scene that was uncomfortable because they had not even started filming. Maybe it was his personality. Maybe she marked him off from the start. She thought that she was better suited for this job. She was angry that he got this project, resented that he was able to take on this project that she so desperately wanted creative control over, and then went into this plan and spun this narrative about him. I don't know. I have no idea what started it. Based on these next texts that she sent to Taylor, it sure seems like there was a lot of resentment. She said, his entire brand is disassembling toxic masculinity. He monetizes it, he does TED Talks, but he says that to you. We don't know what they say. Not only is it so rude, but it's untrue. The thing that enraged me is that you are in an absolute league of your own in being both the most popular artist alive and one of all time, but also the most respected and awarded. And then she goes on and says, I've been raging ever since. Even though I know it all comes from what you said perfectly, he just so wants to be in the room, but has to act like he doesn't. I see it. I understand that it's opposite day with him. He's so green that he thinks that that is what makes him cool enough to fit in, when in fact it's effing enthusiasm, fandom, and respect for those killing it that shows that you're confident with where you are in life. So this is what they're talking about after that meeting with Justin Baldoni. So to me, it seems like something happened way before the movie started, that, Blake didn't like him from the jump, and that him protecting his story that he owned and his script that he wrote, his writing, his project, pushing back against her rewrites, pushing back against the Taylor effing Swift, that she saw that as being misogynistic and him being problematic because he didn't take the League of Her Own, the world's most famous storyteller, Taylor Swift side. Like, I am so sorry, Blake Lively, you do not have to respect Taylor Swift or do what she tells you to do in order to be confident in yourself or to be killing it in your own career. Like, those do not equate one another. Now, the last piece of evidence that seems to solidify Taylor's involvement to me are these texts. More than a year later, just a couple weeks before the complaint and the New York Times article drops, Taylor sends a headline to Blake about Justin Baldoni. And she writes, I think this bitch knows that something is coming because he has gotten out his tiny violin. So yeah, I think it's safe to say that Taylor Swift, you were involved. You were involved far before the cameras started rolling. And and then I started thinking about what else was going on in pop culture this week before all of this evidence dropped. The fact that randomly some rumors started swirling about Taylor and her relationship. Just look at all of these, that maybe they're on the fritz, they're going through their first big, trial and tribulation. Are they putting their wedding on hold? And then it clicked. This is my theory. She purposefully did this. Tree Payne, her PR agent, she did this to drown out what she knew was coming. Allegedly. Like, Lively is suing Justin Baldoni for retaliation and using PR, doing allegedly exactly what she did. What Taylor Swift is doing right now with her own team. And so now, guys, we are seeing all of this discourse over whether Taylor Swift was in the right and whether she was just trying to be a good friend. This TikToker says, when more documents just dropped about Taylor Swift's involvement in the Blake Lively Justin Baldoni lawsuit, and it only makes Taylor Swift look like the realest friend ever because she's backing her bestie, Blake Lively. And some of the comments did crack me up. Like, this person said, I would pass away if somebody showed my text with my bestie. True. Very true. Private. Somebody else said, so y'all don't gossip about people that you're mad at? And those are funny, objectively, and I get that, but these are more relevant. One person says, I do think that Taylor needs to be held accountable. However, if my friend was telling me about all of this awful stuff that a man was doing to her, and I did not know the full story, because again, Taylor is on this huge world tour, she's not at home, she's not really in New York, she's all over the globe. If I didn't know that, I would also be talking shit about him as well. Another person says, not a Taylor Swift fan, but she only knew what Blake told her. Again, she wasn't on the set. She didn't know the whole story, and that was before the entire situation, before everything came to light. She was just defending her friend. I could understand if that was all that happened. Or if Taylor, came clean and said, yeah, okay, I knew about this, sorry. Or just didn't say anything. Didn't make any comments, didn't fight it, and just stayed out of it. But instead, her team got involved. They deflected. They gaslit lawyers and the public. They tried to pretend like she had no knowledge that anything was going on. Like, they just used her song for the trailer. For all we know, it could have just been something that her brother decided to do. Like, little old me Taylor knows nothing. I'm just strumming my guitar. Like, that is what they tried to convince us. It would have been far more admirable if she had been honest about what she knew and her involvement, even to just say that to lawyers if she was requested. She didn't need to tell us. That's totally fine. No false statements necessary. It was the gaslighting and the lying that was just so ridiculous. Like, how did you really believe that you were so powerful that your texts would not get subpoenaed? Like, that's not really how the world works. But anyway, that is besides the point. Moving on from Taylor Swift. In my opinion, this new docket of evidence is not just bad for Taylor, it's really not good for Blake, in my opinion. Because regardless of, what actually went down on that set and who people liked and preferred favored, her or Baldoni, who was happy, who was comfortable. We now know that before anyone called action, before anyone started rolling the cameras, she had, based on her conversations with Taylor Swift and others, she had a premeditated goal of getting creative control of this film. Maybe she wasn't happy just being the lead actress. She wanted to drive the whole ship, and allegedly, she went into this entire project disliking and trying to manipulate Justin Baldoni. And all of these texts, it completely muddies the water around her accusations about sexual harassment, and if Justin and his team retaliated, what they were actually retaliating against. Were they retaliating against sexual harassment allegations, or were they retaliating against a year and a half of slander and manipulation? I look at all this and I'm like, no wonder Justin Baldoni cracked. Like, no wonder he hired his own team and tried to fight back, because having to contend with somebody who wants to control your work, who, just sees you as a dispensable means to an end, who is poisoning your reputation, who is purely driven by their own success and agenda, I am sure that it is enough to drive anyone mad. Okay, guys, the Pendragon cycle, The Rise of the Merlin, the show that I did with DailyWire a couple of years ago, officially premieres today on DailyWire Plus. Check out this new trailer, and hopefully you enjoy the show.
All of this is an illusion, an echo of a voice that has died. And soon that echo will cease.
They say that Merlin is mad. They say he was a king in Dyfed, the son of a princess of lost Atlantis. They say the future and the past are known to him, that the fire and the wind tell him their secrets, that the magic of the hill folk and druids come forth at his easy command. They say he slew hundreds. Hundreds, do you hear? That the world burned and trembled at his wrath.
The Merlin died long before you and I were born.
Merlin Emrys has returned to the land of the living.
Vortigern is gone. Rome is gone. The Saxon is here.
Saxon Hengist has assembled the greatest war host ever seen in the Island of the Mighty. And before the summer is through, he means to take the throne. And he will have it. If we are too busy squabbling amongst ourselves to take up arms against him, here is your hope. A king will arise to hold all Britain in his hand. A high king who will be the wonder of the world.
You. To a future of peace.
There'll be no peace in these lands till we are all dust.
Men of the Island of the Mighty, you stand together. You stand as Britons. You stand as one.
Great darkness is falling upon this land. These brothers are our only hope to stand against it.
Not our only hope.
They say Merlin slew 70 men with his own hands. At Cathay, he slew 500.
No man is capable of such a thing.
The mortal man.